Imagine this. Traveller, on a quiet night when the universe feels closer than usual, you find yourself drawn to a single event, as if something out there wanted you to notice it. An object from another star, silent and unbound, slipping past the edge of the sun where no visitor should survive. And then it broke the rules. 3 coronal eruptions, each carrying the force of 1 trillion atomic bombs, converged on one point, and 3i Atlas did not shatter. It brightened. It turned blue. It held its line with impossible calm. What if this wasn't survival, but intention? What if the anomaly was the message, a stay with me? Let's drift a little deeper. Traveller. Breathe slowly and imagine this scene with me. The sun, ancient and unwavering, had been burning for more than 4 billion years without once breaking its rhythm. Its surface churned with storms too vast for human imagination, yet even those storms followed the familiar language of physics. But on October 29th, 2025, something subtle in that language shifted. Not broken, not shattered, but bent the way light bends when it slips through water. And at the centre of this strange curvature of reality was a visitor small in size yet immense in implication, drifting silently along a hyperbolic thread. 3i Atlas. A fragment from another star, a wanderer older than our world. You were never meant to witness such a thing, traveller. None of us were. And yet here we are, guided by a quiet instinct. Some call it curiosity, others call it destiny, to observe an object that does not obey the laws that cradle our solar system. When the moment of perihelion arrived at 1342, UTC scientists expected what textbooks had prepared them for heat vapour chaos and dissolution. A comet should flare as it nears the sun, then crack bright and fragment, and slowly unravel into dust. It is always the same story. Energy and mass, outlight rising gently along a curve that mathematics predicts with eerie precision. The sun's furnace does not show mercy, not to ice, not to carbon, not to stone. But 3i Atlas was no ordinary visitor. It had crossed the void between stars under conditions we can only imagine, bombarded by cosmic radiation, sculpted by magnetic storms older than Earth, carrying with it the chemistry of a forgotten system. And on that day and that moment it revealed the depth of its strangeness. The first sign was the light. Not the warm yellow we know from sunlight bouncing off dust, not the faint red typical of cometary scatter. Instead, the object erupted into a shade of electric blue, a colour too energetic, too precise, too coherent to be casually dismissed. Instruments from Soho Stereo Angos 19 caught the surge at the same instant. The brightness curve did not climb like a hill, it rose like a wall, a vertical ascent, a wave of luminosity that obeyed none of the scaling laws familiar to solar physicists. Imagine that for a moment observe a small unbound mass illuminating itself with the intensity of something far larger, a brief blaze bluer than the sun itself, light behaving as if the object were not merely reflecting energy, but generating it or transforming it, as though the physics we know had suddenly entered a new dialect. Some mysteries listener aloud, some scream their presence into the sky, but this one whispered, and that whisper was enough to unsettle every mind watching the data feeds. Brightening of such magnitude should mean violent sublimation jets, plumes, shards. Yet the coronagraph saw none. No debris, no jets, no spray of dust. The object did not flinch under the solar blast. It did not wobble. Its trajectory stayed perfect, a clean gravitational arc untouched by recoil. Pressure without push. Heat without disintegration. Light without loss. This is the part that keeps scientists awake at night, traveller. Because at the core of physics lies a symmetry energy never arrives without cost. Every gain has a price. Every light comes from something burning, breaking, or releasing its stored motion. But 3i Atlas behaved like a body exempt from those old conditions, as if its nature belonged to a different rulebook. Somewhere deep inside the instrument rooms, amid the hum of servers and the glow of status lights, a quiet realization spread. The anomaly was not the sun, it was the visitor. Think of the silence between data packets, that thin breath where machines wait for signals. In that silence, the universe was thinking. The colour analysis confirmed what the curves had suggested. Blue emission on a scale that should not exist. To glow that way, the surface would need to reach temperatures beyond the visible layer of the sun, and yet the infrared readings showed no catastrophic heating. It remained stable, calm, almost serene, as though the visitor had learned how to inhabit the sun's rage without absorbing its damage. Tonight, the universe whispers again. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Scientists combed through earlier data tracing the object's origins. The hyperbolic trajectory was unmistakable. 3i Atlas was not bound to our star. It came from the cold darkness between systems bearing the memory of a place beyond our reach. Its incoming angle cut through the ecliptic by more than 40 degrees, the mark of a stranger. Its speed, over 89 kilometers per second, far exceeded what any planetary slingshot could produce, and its composition, hinted at by spectral fingerprints, belonged to chemistry unlike anything familiar. Diatomic carbon, cyanogen, nickel without iron, each a clue, each a contradiction, a molecular puzzle that murmured of distant furnaces, ancient collisions, or exotic formations, perhaps even structures nature rarely attempts. But the mind drifts, traveller, and that is all right. Because what matters most is not whether 3 Atlas is a comet, a fragment, or something formed under conditions we cannot yet name. What matters is what it reminds us that ignorance is not failure, it is fuel. That wonder is not childish, it is the beginning of knowledge. And that in the vast quiet of space, even a brief anomaly can open a doorway into humility. As the visitor passed behind the sun, temporarily hidden from our world, its light still burned blue, unbroken, defiant. And in that hidden moment, something ancient still moved. Something that had travelled millions of years only to brush our star with impossible calm. Rest here for a moment, traveller. Let the thoughts settle, like dust in a beam of light. You are not lost in space, you are part of it. And the story continues. Traveller. Let us drift deeper. When 3 Atlas emerged from behind the sun, the universe revealed something quiet yet astonishing. The brightness had not faded. In fact, its light held steady, stable, unwavering like an ember protected from the wind. And for scientists accustomed to the rhythm of decay, to the way heat disperses and matter yields, this persistence felt almost intimate, like watching a candle remain lit in a storm that should have drowned it. Brightness in astronomy is language. Every rise and fall is a sentence, every flare a syllable. But what 3i Atlas wrote that day was not a sentence, it was a question in blue. The colour was the first whisper of anomaly. Ordinary comets scatter sunlight into whites and yellows softened by dust. But the object glowed in electric cerulean, a tone that belonged not to reflection, but to emission. To create blue light, molecules must be excited to energy levels typically found in plasma chambers, auroras, or stellar surfaces. Yet this visitor, dark and cold, only hours earlier produced the colour effortlessly, like memory rather than reaction. Observer imagined that a body smaller than a mountain, glowing bluer than a star. Scientists searched for the familiar mechanisms: cyanogen, emission, dicarbon, fluorescence, ultraviolet pumping. Each explanation carried truth, but none matched the scale. These molecules can glow, yes, but not across a halo, the width of a planet, and not with such coherence, such uniformity, such calm. The envelope of light surrounding 3i Atlas stretched nearly 300,000 kilometers, a sphere of radiance large enough to swallow Earth whole. And yet its structure remained smooth, elegant, almost geometric. Not chaotic like a comet's dust cloud, not ragged like erupting ice, but luminous, symmetrical and still. Tonight the universe whispers again. Silence is the universe thinking. The envelope behaved as though it had boundaries, like a subtle cage of energy shaped by invisible hands. It expanded gently, only slightly, as the object circled the sun, but its brightness held. The outer edge remained nearly as bright as the core, defying thermodynamic decay. For those watching the data, the glow appeared less like a coma and more like a chamber, a sphere of light, within which the visitor remained protected or perhaps transformed. Magnetism was the next suspect. Some proposed the object acted like a plasma antenna, capturing and reorganizing charged particles from the solar wind. Plasma can glow in coherent forms: auroras, filaments, arcs. but the required magnetic field strength was far beyond anything known in natural small bodies. Earth produces auroras through magnetism, Jupiter through immense field strength, but a kilometre-scale interstellar fragment. Its magnetism should be negligible, a whisper drowned out by the sun's roar, yet something held that halo together. Traveller, hold that thought gently the way you might hold a small stone warmed by the sun. Let it rest without needing to solve it. Others wondered if the light was trapped photons bouncing inside a shell, like echoes inside a cavern, scattering, rescattering, amplifying. Radiative trapping is a known phenomenon, but not at this magnitude. For trapping to happen so efficiently, the material would need a density and uniformity, almost architectural, as though the surface was crafted to funnel light, not merely endure it. Was the object hollow? Was the envelope a kind of electromagnetic skin? A resonance? A reaction? We have no name for. Each idea hovered like dust motes in sunlight, visible, intriguing, but not quite within reach. Across mission control rooms, scientists spoke in calm, measured tones, but beneath the professionalism lingered a quiet awe. There is a moment, traveller, when knowledge meets the edge of its map, and in the moment even the most rational minds feel the gravity of wonder. This was such a moment. The brightness curve once plotted against distance revealed another impossibility. As 3 Atlas approached the Sun, the intensity rose not by a factor of 4 or 16, but nearly 200. A power law of 7.5, a runaway slope. No outgassing could explain it. No dust jet, no thermal cascade. The luminosity suggested not reflection, but production, as though energy was being taken, in reorganized and re-released as blue radiance, like a natural amplifier responding to the sun's fire with a structure of its own. And then, traveller, the impossible symmetry. Cometary structures are inherently chaotic. Dust vents in irregular bursts, ice cracks unpredictably, tails bend under solar wind. But the envelope of 3I Atlas appeared balanced, nearly perfect, expanding as though governed by an internal logic rather than external forces. If nature created this, then nature was operating on a palette far richer than we imagined. If not nature, then perhaps nature has more forms of order than we have yet recognised. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Behind closed doors, plasma physicists spoke of Alf-Venn waves, oscillations in magnetised plasma that can ripple like musical notes. And indeed, slight flickers in the halo appeared periodically, as though responding to some internal rhythm. Not chaotic, not random, rhythmic, almost gentle. Travellers of the mind compared the readings to Io's plasma torus, Venus's induced magnetosphere, even to the dancing auroras at Earth's poles. But none matched the scale or purity of what 3I Atlas displayed. Imagine, listener, a sphere of light that hums softly with the solar wind, not disintegrating under pressure but resonating with it, as though the visitor had found harmony with the storm, not conflict, and still through all of it, the object moved perfectly silently without acceleration. No recoil, no wobble, no thrust. Pressure without push, light without loss, a contradiction wrapped in radiance. As the hours passed and the halo expanded like the breath of a sleeping giant, scientists realized they were not watching a passive object. They were watching a process, a behavior, perhaps even a conversation written in energy. And somewhere in the quiet, somewhere beyond our reach, something ancient still moved. It's all right to not understand. Let this be a resting point, traveller. Close your eyes for a breath. The cosmos will keep watch. Traveller. Let's return to that moment. October 29th, 2025, the day our sun broke its rhythm. From the beginning, solar eruptions have followed patterns older than continents. They rise from magnetic knots, flare, twist into arcs and release. But on that day, something changed. Within 9 minutes, 3 full coronal mass ejections leapt from the same narrow region of the solar surface, each carrying billions of tons of charged plasma, each accelerating past 2 million kilometers per hour. These eruptions did not scatter in random directions like usual. Their trajectories curved toward a single invisible corridor in space, and inside that corridor drifted a small silent visitor glowing blue. Imagine that observer the Sun, a star of impossible magnitude sending 3 separate waves of energy toward an object no larger than a mountain. Not by chance, not by statistical noise, but with intentional alignment as though our star was reaching for it, or reacting to it. This is where the mystery deepens. Solar physicists treat the Sun like a living organism made of magnetic loops plasma cells and seething convection patterns. But even in its wildest states, the Sun rarely fires sequential CMEs down the same path. The probability of 3 eruptions converging within minutes is so small, it is rarely discussed outside theoretical exercises. Yet here the data spoke clearly the corridor existed, and 3i Atlas was waiting in it. Some wondered if the visitor had created the corridor a gravitational resonance, a magnetic influence, something subtle, yet powerful enough to shape solar plasma. Others asked a quieter question. What if the Sun was responding, not initiating Traveller? Hold that thought gently. Let it settle like stardust in a dark room. When the first wave struck 3i Atlas, something impossible occurred. Instead of dispersing, the energy folded. Instead of heating, the spectrum shifted. Observers watched as the flare's particles vanished into the object's halo, with almost no scattering, as if absorbed, reorganized, or redirected. No model predicted this. No simulation allowed it. Matter does not simply disappear, and energy does not choose where to go. Yet the blue halo remained calm, expanding only slightly, responding as though the visitor had been preparing for this exact moment. The second CME arrived 5 minutes later. This one carried more mass, more charge, more rage, 1 billion tons of plasma rushing outward at terrifying velocities. The object's brightness spiked again, not chaotically, but in a clean symmetric pulse. Then the halo stabilized, rippling like a drumhead struck by a slow, deliberate hand. Then came the third, the largest, the one that should have ended the story. But instead, the story began. Its arrival created a brief, breathtaking phenomenon, a flash of blue so intense it overwhelmed parts of the coronagraph's sensors. For 0.12 seconds, the object appeared brighter than the surrounding corona. That should be impossible. Nothing that small should rival the outer glow of a star. Yet there it was. Scientists debated whether the flash was an artifact, a reflection, a glitch, a calibration error. But when they compared all 3 observatories, they found the same spike. The flash was real, brief but real. And then, silence again. Stillness. A stability so precise it felt intentional. Consider this, listener. No rotation change, no mass shedding, no acceleration. A perfect line through chaos, as though the visitor were walking through a storm without letting the wind touch its shoulders. After the event, solar physicists pointed to a rare possibility: magnetic reconnection. Plasma from the flare could have been funneled along field lines shaped by the object's presence. But this led to an uncomfortable implication. The visitor's magnetic influence would need to be extraordinary, powerful enough to hold its own shape under intense solar pressure. But 3i Atlas, by all standard measurements, was too small and too light to command such influence. Unless, of course, its mass was not what we believed. In the weeks following the CME triad, analyses from 227 observatories worldwide revealed the troubling truth: the object displayed almost no non-gravitational acceleration. Even while outgassing over 150 kilograms of volatile material per second, it remained on a near-perfect trajectory. That should not be possible for something its size. To show that little recoil, it would need to be far more massive than initial estimates, perhaps billions of tons. This contradicted every density model of cometary material. The numbers pointed to something else: a structure, a hollow shell, a deliberate design. But scientists resisted that conclusion. The mind resists what the heart fears to contemplate. Even so, the object's behaviour at Perihelion forced a shift. A new term began appearing quietly in drafts and internal reports: thermodynamic anomaly. A phrase used only when observed energy does not obey the expected rules. A phrase that carries both scientific weight and philosophical unease. And Traveller, unease was warranted. because after the third CME something else happened. Not immediately, but slowly, quietly, like a tide reversing. 3Z Atlas accelerated. Not much, just a few millimeters per second at first, but enough that long-range Doppler tracking stations noticed. Enough that orbital predictions had to be adjusted. Enough to suggest energy had not merely been absorbed, but used. Imagine a silent object gliding past the edge of Mars, not pushed by thrusters or jets, but by the memory of the sun's fire. Imagine a body acting not like debris, but like a vessel that knows where it's going. Some researchers whispered another possibility not in public papers, but in late-night messages and in the fragile vulnerability of unrecorded conversations. What if we just watch something wake up? It's only speculation, of course. The universe refuses to answer directly. It reveals hints, not conclusions. But hints are enough to stir something old inside us, the awareness that we are small, that we are young, that we are surrounded by truths older than humanity's first spark of curiosity. For now, the corridor of three suns remains one of the strangest solar events on record, a moment when a star and a visitor danced in a way that defied prediction, a choreography written in plasma and silence. Let this thought rest beside you, traveller. Not every mystery is meant to frighten. Some exist simply to remind us we are part of a much larger story. The universe is still writing. Traveller, let us drift once more into the quiet where numbers soften, and the universe speaks in subtleties rather than declarations. In the days following the triple solar eruption, astronomers across the world began comparing their recordings of the event, expecting the usual spread of disagreement that accompanies observations of something so volatile. Separate observatories rarely capture the same details in the exact same way. One instrument might overexpose a flare, another might miss a frame, a third might register plasma thickness differently. Yet this time something strange happened. The datasets matched cleanly, precisely, almost eerily. 3 independent observatories using different sensors and different methods captured the same spike of blue emission, the same suppression of scatter, the same unnaturally stable brightness curve. In astrophysics, such perfect concordance is rare enough to feel like a message. The anomaly deepened when researchers studied the halo surrounding 3I Atlas. It was not chaotic like the dust clouds of comets, nor ragged like thermal jets. Instead, embedded within the blue envelope was a faint circular pattern, subtle but unmistakably structured. A ring. Not a ring of solid matter, but a luminous resonance that pulsed in brightness every 46 seconds. Too slow for rotation, too rhythmic for turbulence, too symmetric to be accident. It was in its quiet way a heartbeat. The ring remained centered around the object as though anchored by something internal, something capable of maintaining coherence even under the pressure of solar plasma. Comets do not do this. They wobble, they shed mass, they distort. But this visitor held its shape as though guided by an internal architecture. Scientists searched for natural comparisons, plasma toroids, Saturnian ring projections, magnetic flux ropes, ionized shells, but nothing matched the behavior they observed. The stability was too perfect, the periodicity too persistent, the symmetry too deliberate, and beneath that rotating resonance the object continued to glow in that impossible shade of electric blue, as if the sun's fire had become the ink with which it inscribed its presence. Meanwhile, the object's trajectory held steady. A typical comet near the sun experiences recoil from outgassing tiny pushes that nudge its orbit even by millimeters per second. But 3I Atlas exhibited no such drift. Its path through space was clean, unwavering, as though protected by an internal mechanism or a shell capable of redistributing stress. Imagine a leaf floating through a hurricane without bending. That is the quiet impossibility observers confronted. In the solar wind, a force that reshapes dust plasma and ions, the visitor behaved as though the environment around it were calm water rather than a storm. Then came the chemical puzzle. Spectral analysis revealed strong nickel signatures. At first, this was not alarming. Nickel appears in comets, especially those that have been heated. But what troubled researchers was what they did not see iron. Nickel and iron are cosmic companions forged together in stellar furnaces, travelling together in dust clouds, condensing together in planets and comets. Yet this object emitted nickel without accompanying iron, a fingerprint without its twin, a note without its chord. To find nickel alone required two possibilities. Either the visitor formed in a star unlike any familiar system, or it possessed a structure and composition shaped by processes nature rarely attempts. The brightness curve told an equally troubling story. Instead of fading as the object left perihelion, the luminosity held steady, almost regulated. Natural bodies flicker as they lose heat. They respond visibly to their environment. But 3i Atlas maintained a consistent radiance, as though governed by some internal equilibrium. It glowed with the steadiness of a lantern shielded from wind. This stability persisted even as the object moved into regions where the solar wind weakened and temperatures fell. Something within the visitor seemed to remember the light it had absorbed, holding it like a stored breath. Behind closed doors, researchers attempted simulations. They adjusted parameters, expanded ranges, inserted exotic models. But none managed to replicate the event. Magnetic reconnection failed to produce the ring structure. Plasma resonance models broke down under energy constraints. Even extreme magnetohydrodynamic frameworks usually reserved for black hole jets and neutron star winds faltered. What they witnessed did not fit inside current diagrams of how energy behaves, and so scientists stepped carefully into humility. They acknowledged that some events mark the boundaries of human understanding. They spoke with measured voices, aware that speculation carries weight, aware that data, when consistent, can shake even the firmest frameworks. There are moments when the universe offers a glimpse of something older than our equations, something that does not ask to be explained, only witnessed. In the silence that followed, researchers began to speak not of malfunction or coincidence, but of possibility. Quietly in emails sent after midnight, in conversations held in observatories, humming with cooling fans, they wondered if 3i Atlas had demonstrated not resistance to the sun's fire, but compatibility with it. Not survival, but resonance. Perhaps the object was not fighting the solar eruptions. Perhaps it was responding to them. Some asked whether the energy had been absorbed then reorganized. Others wondered if the ring was a signature of internal structure, an architecture for handling stress, a system for shaping plasma, maybe even a mechanism designed to convert radiation into motion. These speculations did not appear in public papers. They were too fragile, too new. But they spread among those who had spent their lives studying the sky and had never seen a body behave this way. If the visitor was natural, then nature's creativity is far greater than we imagined. If it was not natural, then the universe had placed something in our path that moved with a kind of intelligence, an intelligence not measured by intention, but by precision. For now, traveller, let your mind rest on this thought: not every anomaly is a threat. Some are invitations, soft reminders that we live in a universe capable of wonder, far beyond our predictions. The ring persists, the blue light endures, and through Atlas continues its silent journey, carrying with it a question that grows larger each day. Traveller, let us drift now to a different world, a colder one where thin winds whisper across rust-coloured plains, and ancient dust records every passing shadow. Mars, our quiet neighbour, our mirror of what Earth might one day become, played an unexpected role in the unfolding mystery of 3i Atlas. For generations, the Red Planet has been our outpost of curiosity, a place where we send machines to observe, measure and remember on our behalf. But on the night of October 2nd and the morning of October 3rd, 2025, Mars became something else. The only world in the solar system positioned to witness the closest approach of an interstellar object in human history. NASA and ESA had prepared for this moment months in advance. High-resolution cameras aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, Mars Express and the Trace Gas Orbiter were all pointed outward away from the planet's own terrain toward the dark sky where 3i Atlas would pass. These instruments were designed for landscapes, for slopes, for ridges, for sediment layers and dust devils. But for this single window of time, they were repurposed to watch a traveller from another star glide behind the sun. Their sensors meant to capture the faintest hues on Martian soil, now strained to catch a flicker of alien light. The first sign of something unusual appeared not in an observatory, but in a modest home office thousands of kilometres away. An amateur astrophotographer named Stephen Burns, sifting through hours of raw Mars rover sky images, noticed a streak. It was thin, slanted, moving against the predictable drift of the stars caused by the planet's rotation. He stitched the images into a short time lapse, and there it was, a point of a light racing across the background at a speed no asteroid or satellite could achieve. 60 kilometers per second. Silent, straight, unhesitating. Burns posted his discovery online. Others followed. They downloaded the same images, highlighted the same motion-debated artifacts and compression noise, but in the end too many saw the same thing for it to be dismissed. The object was real. It was fast, and it was aligned with the predicted path of Through Atlas. But this was only the beginning. Hours later, a second anomaly emerged, smaller, fainter, moving at a slightly different angle. Possibly a fragment, possibly an illusion. Then a third shimmer-bright green lasting less than a second. A flash no one could explain. Not a cosmic ray, not pixel error, not reflection. Something emitted light. Something alive with energy. And then, silence. NASA released no images. ESA released no images. The orbiters had taken thousands of frames, that much was confirmed via tracking logs, and yet none appeared in public databases. Not a single raw image, not even a placeholder. This alone raised questions not because silence implies conspiracy, but because routine science rarely demands restraint. Space agencies normally share raw data within hours. Dust storms, auroras, meteors, everything goes online, but not this. Observer imagined the quiet of a locked room not threatening but heavy with unspoken meaning. Researchers explained the absence in terms of data backlogs, calibration delays, bureaucratic disruptions. All of these were plausible, but the timing was delicate. The closest approach of an interstellar object is not a trivial event. It is the sort of opportunity that planetary missions dream of. The sort of moment that earns front-page images, conference talks, even new mission proposals. And yet, the only confirmed glimpses of 3i Atlas during its Mars passage came not from billion-dollar satellites, but from the sky-watching patience of ordinary people on Earth. A different question began to rise. What did the orbiters see that we did not, Traveller? Hold this question gently. Let it float weightless between wonder and uncertainty. When scientists reconstructed the expected appearance of 3i Atlas at that distance, they predicted it should appear as a compact bright cluster of pixels large enough for high-rise to distinguish structure, small enough to remain elusive. If the object was singular, the shape should have been roughly spherical. If it were shedding fragments, the images should show scattering tail divergence or dust plumes. If it possessed an extended halo, the camera would detect a blurred envelope tinted in wavelengths depending on the gas composition. But none of these predictions matched the amateur data. Instead, the object appeared as a clean streak of coherent light, too sharp for a diffuse coma, too stable for a fragmenting body, too uniform for a natural plume, and the green flash, that brief, almost shy illumination, matched nothing in the models. Green emissions in space typically indicate dicarbon fluorescence, but dicarbon levels around 3i Atlas were virtually non-existent according to the Very Large Telescope's earlier readings. The object should not have been capable of glowing green at all, unless something changed during perihelion. Unless the blue light was not merely a surface phenomenon, but a state of excitation, a condition of energy that altered the visitor's chemistry, structure, or behaviour. Perhaps the object underwent a process, a transformation subtle yet real, triggered by the sun's touch. And if that process had begun, the Mars pass may have been the first window into its consequences. Imagine, Traveller, a silent object emerging from a solar storm with new radiance drifting past Mars while cameras across the planet track its movement. Imagine the cameras capturing something unexpected, something too faint, too strange, too delicate to interpret quickly. Not a threat, not a revelation, simply an anomaly that demands careful study. Science is often careful not because the truth is dangerous, but because accuracy is a responsibility. And so the silence may not be secrecy. It may be caution. The universe does not reveal itself on command. Still, the absence of data leaves room for wonder. In that space, hypotheses arise, some grounded, some wild, some whispered, with both excitement and unease. Was the object alone? Did fragments accompany it? Did the blue halo persist? Did its acceleration continue? Did Mars witness something? Earth could not, traveller, breathe gently. The truth may still come. For now, what remains is the sense of something vast drifting just beyond clarity, a visitor writing its own quiet message across the solar system, unread but undeniable. And somewhere above the red sands of Mars, in a sky thin as breath, a point of blue light passed silently, and left us with questions the universe is still not ready to answer, traveller. Let us drift a little farther now into the quiet architecture of space itself. Because to understand how 3i Atlas defied the predictions of every textbook ever written, we must look not at the object alone but at the vantage points from which it was seen. Light, after all, is only truth when the geometry allows it. The rest is illusion shadows shaped by distance and angles. At the moment of perihelion, when the visitor from another star stood close enough to the sun to flirt with annihilation, 3 silent machines watched from afar. 3 observatories each positioned in a different corner of the Sun-Earth system Perihelion, drifting far ahead of Earth in its orbit. Soho anchored at the gravitational balance of L1, and GOES 19 hovering above our world in geostationary arc. They formed a triangle across millions of kilometres, 3 points of observation that would later become known among mission scientists as the Triangle of Proof. Geometry is not dramatic, traveller, but is faithful. It cares nothing for bias or emotion. It simply reveals. When the data first came in, each spacecraft sent back its own stream of images, grainy coronagraph frames, from stereo deeper exposures from SOHO's LASCO C3 imager, rapid cadence snapshots from GOES 19. Each showed the same impossible event, a burst of blue radiance expanding around a tiny nucleus, moving at nearly 90 kilometers per second. Each recorded a luminosity spike too sharp for sublimation, too coherent for dust, too stable for plasma noise. Individually, these images could have been dismissed. A malfunction in stereo's aging sensors, a flare in SOHO's optics, a processing artifact in GOES 19. Instruments fail. Algorithms misinterpret. The sun is an unpredictable neighbour, and coronagraphs often pick up ghost arcs, refraction spikes, or stray photons born of solar turbulence. But when 3 machines separated by tens of millions of kilometres record the same anomaly, travelling through the same coordinates, brightening in the same minute geometry, strips away every comforting doubt. The triangles aligned. The truth held. This is why scientists trust triangulation more than memory. Because nature does not synchronize illusions. Only reality does. As astronomers overlaid the data, a quiet shiver moved through mission rooms. The parallax between the spacecraft positions was unmistakable. The brightening event did not belong to the sun's corona. It belonged to a moving body, an object precisely where orbital models predicted 3i Atlas would be. The glow was not an illusion. The envelope was not an echo. It was something real, something radiating, something stable in the face of cosmic violence. Tonight, observer imagined the silence in those control rooms, the hum of machines, the stillness of teams who realized they were witnessing something that physics had not prepared them for. Scientists are cautious. They resist the poetic. But for a moment, many felt the weight of wonder. For nearly 40 minutes, the visitor glowed with an intensity that should have shattered into dust. Yet its orbit never shifted. Its spin held steady. Its trajectory remained true, like a stone moving through calm water, rather than a comet being battered by radiant storms. The triangulated data confirmed it. The object had absorbed the energy of multiple coronal eruptions, each carrying more power than civilization has released in all of history, and emerged unchanged. Traveller, pause with me here. Listen to the shape of that contradiction. A body that glowed like a small star, but moved as if nothing had touched it. A halo that expanded like a living thing, but showed no signs of outgassing or thrust. A visitor illuminated by physics, and yet untouched by its consequences. Geometry forced the scientific world to confront this paradox, and in doing so, it revealed something deeper, that stability can be its own kind of mystery. After the data was synchronized, mission teams created a full 3D reconstruction, a slow rotation of the Sun and the interstellar object, as seen from all three spacecraft at once. It became one of the most haunting visualizations in heliophysics. A glowing blue sphere drifting through the pale haze of the solar corona, its nucleus steady, its envelope breathing like a pulse from another world. It is rare for astronomers to use language like pulse-breathing heartbeat, yet in private logs the metaphors appeared often. When confronted with something the mind struggles to categorize, the heart reaches for what it knows. The geometry told them something else, something subtle. If the brightening had been a fluke of angle, a solar streamer or an artifact of perspective, the apparent size of the halo would have changed across viewpoints. But across stereo, a Soho and goes. Cinini, the diameter of the luminous envelope varied by less than 3%. This meant the envelope was not optical noise. It had physical scale approximately 300,000 kilometers across, a sphere of light larger than most planets, a cocoon of energy in which a small silent traveller moved untouched. Somewhere deep within mission archives, one scientist wrote in the margin of a report, "Light should reveal the object, but here light revealed the limits of our understanding." Imagine that traveller, a scientist, admitting in quiet handwriting the fragility of certainty. What troubled researchers most was the symmetry. Cometary physics is messy. Dust vents erupt unevenly. Jets carve asymmetrical patterns. Gas clouds develop turbulence filaments, spirals, never perfect balance. But the halo around 3I Atlas was nearly perfectly round, its brightness uniform, its edge smooth as if defined by a boundary condition rather than chaos. Nature resists straight lines. But here was a sphere that refused irregularity. Some argue that symmetry is not proof of design. It is simply the universe minimizing energy. Perhaps they were right. But even energy minimization has limits, and this uniformity felt less like decay and more like equilibrium, as though the object was not merely enduring physics, but negotiating with it. Tonight, Traveller let that thought settle gently. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. As the data continued to be analysed, the triangle of proof became something more than geometry. It became the scientific equivalent of a deep breath, a pause between disbelief and acceptance, a moment when the universe in its vast intelligence whispered, "Look again." And so we did, and what we found was not an answer, but a door, a quiet, glowing door, leading into deeper silence, leading into deeper questions, leading into the humility that comes when a visitor from another star writes its presence into the geometry of our sky. Sleep now, Traveller. The cosmos is vast, but it is watching gently. Traveller, as we move deeper into this quiet stretch of night, let us turn towards something older than gravity, older than planets, older even than memory. Let us turn toward light, the first language the universe ever spoke. For in the story of 3I Atlas, it is light more than matter or motion that reveals the deepest contradictions. Light is what trembled first. Light is what refused the rules. And light is what carried the faintest whisper of something we still struggle to name. When the first datasets came down from stereo, a Soho and goes 19, the images were unassuming pale frames of the solar corona shadows drifting across a white haze, the small bright point of the interstellar visitor crossing the furnace of the sun. But when the brightness curve was plotted, the familiar shape, that gentle, predictable slope of sublimation, simply wasn't there. Instead, there was a wall, a near vertical ascent, an explosion of radiance so sudden that even the most seasoned observers paused, wondering if their screens were lying to them. But the truth, Traveller, was that the universe was not lying. It was speaking. Brightness rises when ice turns to gas, when dust scatters sunlight, when comets fragile and ancient burn their outer layers in surrender. But the glow of 3I Atlas was not the glow of surrender. It was the glow of emission light produced from within rather than merely reflected. A blue so intense it defied the familiar fingerprints of natural chemistry. a blue that suggested temperatures higher than molten metal, and yet the object remained whole, its structure unbroken, its path unbent. Heat without fracture, light without loss, pressure without push. These phrases, once poetic, became scientific descriptions of a real event captured across 3 spacecraft. The symmetry of the radiance deepened the mystery. In the coronagraph images, the envelope surrounding the visitor did not flutter in the solar wind or bend in chaotic filaments, as cometary material always does. Instead, it bloomed outward in a near-perfect sphere, a geometry so balanced that it unsettled even those who resisted poetic explanation. Nature in its wildness resists perfection. Yet here was a halo that refused a symmetry, an equilibrium that held against turbulence. Light shaped itself around the visitor like an intentional boundary, as though the glow obeyed an internal order rather than the external violence surrounding it. Some scientists tried to explain it through plasma behaviour, smoothing forces, magnetic pressures, electron recombination. Others considered exotic dust, ultrafine particles scattering short wavelengths with eerie efficiency. But each model, while elegant in its own way, solved only a part of the equation, and left the rest untouched, because even if the envelope could be produced, its stability remained unexplained. And even if the stability could be modelled, its spectral purity defied replication. The blue was too consistent, too clean, too alive with energy. Light Traveller rarely lies. It reveals temperatures, compositions, processes, histories. But the light of 3i Atlas revealed something else, a refusal. A refusal to cool when distance from the sun increased. A refusal to dim as thermal equilibrium demanded. A refusal to behave like the debris of any world we know. For days after Perihelion, the brightness held steady as if the object were conserving a quiet internal equilibrium. This plateau, as analysts called it, became one of the most disquieting traces in all the data. Natural objects do not maintain luminosity. They decay, they fade, they return to darkness. But this visitor did not. Perhaps the most haunting part of this luminous contradiction was how gently it unfolded. There was no eruption, no violent disintegration, no scatter of fragments into the solar wind. Only a steady glow, calm and unbroken, as if the visitor were exhaling energy with impossible patience. And then, just as suddenly as the plateau had formed, it collapsed, a sharp decline in brightness over just hours, as if some internal process had reached its final threshold and fallen quiet. The curve did not resemble cooling. It resembled the shutdown of a system, the extinguishing of a mechanism, the end of a process, rather than a decay of heat. Scientists debated endlessly. Was it trapped plasma? Was it luminescent material? Was it resonance within a magnetic envelope? Or was it something more subtle? The behaviour of a structure rather than a stoner system rather than a remnant. The debate never settled. It still hasn't. But in the silence between those arguments, something more human emerged: awe. Because the universe had revealed not just a phenomenon, but a boundary, a reminder that, even after centuries of measurement and theory, we still live beside mysteries vast enough to humble every certainty we hold. Traveller, as you listen, picture those scientists working late into the night. The hum of servers filling the quiet, the soft glow of screens illuminating faces drawn by concentration and disbelief. Picture them watching that near vertical line on the graph, knowing that no calibration could erase it. Picture them staring at spectra so blue they seemed unreal, knowing they were real. Picture them leaning back in their chairs, breathing slowly, accepting that sometimes the universe hands us not explanations but invitations. For that is what the light of 3 Atlas became, an invitation, a soft, persistent whisper asking us to expand our wonder, to consider that matter forged under alien suns may carry behaviours we have no language for yet, to accept that even in a universe ruled by thermodynamics, there are corners where the laws seem to hesitate, as if listening to something older than themselves. Tonight, as we close this reflection, remember, this light is the universe thinking. And for a brief moment, this visitor thought in a language we could not fully read. You're not lost in that mystery, you are part of it. Rest, Traveller. The cosmos keeps watch. Traveller, let us drift again into the light, but this time not toward brightness alone. Tonight we step into the halo itself, the vast self-luminous envelope that surrounded 3i Atlas. Like a second body, a shell of radiance too large, too stable and too symmetrical to fit any familiar category of matter. If the language of brightness revealed the object's contradictions, then the envelope revealed its scale, a scale so staggering that even those who had spent their careers studying the violent architecture of the solar wind found themselves quietly unsettled. The first analysts who saw the images assumed they were looking at optical noise, a flare, a ghost reflection, a misaligned filter. But the glow did not behave like any of those artifacts. It held its shape. It maintained its intensity. And it wrapped around the nucleus of the object with a consistency that suggested structure, not accident. When measurements were finally taken, the numbers forced even the skeptics into stillness. 300,000 kilometers. That was the diameter of the luminous sphere. A shell of light 25 times wider than Earth surrounding an object no larger than a mountain. Astronomers stared at this impossible ratio, a nucleus smaller than a grain of dust compared to the size of its halo, and felt something that data rarely gives quiet disbelief. You see, traveller comets do form comas, hazy atmospheres of vapour and dust that scatter sunlight. But comas are fragile, messy, unstable. Their edges dissolve into the solar wind. Their brightness fades with distance. Their shapes twist under magnetic pressure. Nothing in the known physics of sublimation produces a stable planet-sized sphere of radiant energy that remains smooth, uniform and symmetric. Yet this one did. What bewildered scientists most was how the envelope behaved. It did not expand chaotically. It did not ripple with turbulence. It drifted outward with the gentle confidence of something maintaining equilibrium, as though it were balancing pressure and light through a mechanism we have not yet learned to name. When mission teams compared frames from stereo or Soho and GOES 19, the envelope's diameter changed by less than 3% between all viewpoints. That level of stability defied not only comet models, but basic thermodynamic intuition. A shell of gas should dissipate, a field of charged particles should distort, a cavity of plasma should fluctuate. But this halo remained whole, and deep within it, silent against the storm, the nucleus moved with unwavering calm, a dark seed, holding its position in the centre of a glowing sphere. If the brightness spike of 3i Atlas suggested an internal energy process, then the envelope suggested something far stranger: containment. Some researchers proposed resonance fluorescence molecules absorbing ultraviolet radiation from the sun and re-emitting it as visible blue light. But the scale was wrong. Fluorescent emission cannot sustain a sphere hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide at such intensity. Others suggested a magnetic scaffolding, a shell of plasma confined by field lines like an auroral bubble, magnified to impossible proportions, but that too required magnetic coherence no comet could generate. There was even a hypothesis that the envelope was a kind of induced plasma cavity, a place where solar wind particles had been trapped, accelerated and forced into a luminous shell. But this demanded a conductor, a geometry, a kind of order that should not exist around a natural tumbling fragment born from alien dust. And yet the envelope behaved as if order was precisely what held it together. Imagine it, traveller, a sphere of light, floating in the solar corona, breathing with a rhythm, too slow for violence, too steady for entropy, a boundary where brightness did not decline with distance, where the outer edge of the halo remained nearly as luminous as the core. Such uniformity is not how gas behaves. It is how a system behaves, something regulating itself, something distributing energy with deliberate symmetry. Even the colour of the envelope deepened the mystery. It leaned blue, the same blue that burned from the object's core during perihelion. Blue light means high energy, short wavelength, a photon produced by processes far beyond casual reflection. In nature, only highly excited ions or specific carbon-based fluorescing structures emit such hues. But here the scale was planetary. How does a shell of sparse particles across 300,000 kilometers glow with the intensity of organized matter? The answer, if one existed, did not fit any familiar vocabulary. For hours, the envelope held its spherical form. It did not collapse as dust should. It did not distort as plasma should. It did not tear under the pressure of coronal shock waves. Instead, it followed the object like a translucent cocoon, steady and changeless as if protecting, regulating or mirroring something hidden at its centre, and then Traveller just as quietly as it appeared. It receded, not shattered, not blown apart. It simply faded when the object's geometry slipped behind the solar disk from Earth's perspective, and by the time it re-emerged days later, the vast sphere had vanished, entirely replaced by a faint, narrow residual glow. A mystery that arrived, suddenly stayed impossibly still and then dissolved into silence. In the mission logs, engineers referred to the halo not as a coma, but as an envelope of light, because no other word fit. It was not a cloud, not a tail, not a plume. It was something nearer to a boundary condition, a phenomenon that felt both natural and strangely deliberate, as if shaped by rules we do not yet know how to measure. Traveller, breathe for a moment. Let this image settle in your mind, a traveller from the dark, wrapped in a sphere of blue fire, crossing the furnace of the sun, silent, unbroken, and then gone. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only witnessed. Some lights are not meant to teach, only to remind us how little we understand. Tonight, let the envelope of Through Arc Atlas become what it truly is, a soft boundary between certainty and wonder. Rest a moment, listener. The cosmos will keep watch. Traveller. We now enter the part of the story where the universe closed its curtains, where the visitor slipped behind the sun out of sight from every human eye, into a region of the sky where daylight erases all faintness. This is the chapter astronomers call solar conjunction, a period when the cosmos reminds us that observation is a privilege, not a guarantee. For a few hours on October 29th, 2025, the 3i, Atlas, entered the one place where human vision could not follow, and in that brief concealment something extraordinary happened. From Earth's surface the moment was unremarkable. The bright disk of the sun swallowed every trace of the visitor, just as it has swallowed thousands of comets, asteroids, and wanderers across history. Daylight washed the sky in blue, erasing the faint signatures of stars and unbound fragments. Observatories on the ground had no choice but to wait patient and blind, surrendering the object to the solar glare. To those who watched from Earth, the story paused. But in orbit, in the silent cold above our atmosphere, the machines continued listening. Solar conjunction is not a blind spot for spacecraft positioned beyond the atmospheric haze. With coronagraphs, instruments that block the sun's blinding disk, satellites can peer into the faint halo of the solar corona. They can see what lies just beyond what the human eye can bear, and it was there in that delicate region of partial shadow that human instruments witnessed something no eye ever could. The first images arrived hours after the event. The delay came from solar interference radio noise that scrambled transmissions until the alignment between Earth and the Sun began to shift. But when the data finally reached the control rooms at ESA, NASA and NOAA, scientists realized that they had seen a luminous transformation unfold in secret. The object had brightened again, a deeper bluer radiance blooming around it in the hidden parts of the corona. To imagined it, traveller, picture the darkness of an eclipsed sun, the soft veil of the corona surrounding a small circular shadow. And within that veil a point of light growing until it becomes a sphere glowing in electric tones, expanding gently like breath in cold air. A sphere that outshone every coronal tendril around it. This was not reflection. It was emission. An emission of this luminous, this coherent should not belong to a fragment of rock or ice. By the time the images were decoded, the event had already passed. The envelope had formed, radiated, stabilised, and begun to fade, all while Earth was blind. There is a poetic symmetry in that, traveller. The sun symbol of illumination had become the very curtain that hid this revelation from us. Scientists later reconstructed the geometry. At the moment of maximum brightening, the object was positioned exactly behind the sun from Earth's line of sight, a perfect alignment that lasted only minutes. Had it been even a degree away, we would have seen the flare from ground-based telescopes, and perhaps even captured its radiance in natural light. But the cosmos chose a different script. It allowed only our mechanical proxies, our machines of curiosity, to witness the event. In deeper reflection, astronomers spoke softly of this timing, of the coincidence, of the elegance of a revelation delivered only to remote sensors, Had the flare been visible to the naked eye, the world would have seen it as an omen, a sign, a cosmic gesture. Instead, it unfolded quietly, recorded by instruments designed to study storms on the sun, not visitors from other stars. There is something almost humbling in that. A reminder that the universe does not perform. It simply exists. And if we are fortunate, if our geometry aligns with its silence, we catch a glimpse. It is during moments like these, Traveller, that the scientific mind becomes contemplative. The data told the teams what happened. But the timing asked a different question. Why here, why then, why? Only in a hidden window. Most scientists avoid such metaphysical framing. But in the quiet hours of late-night analysis, even the most sceptical among them admitted that the coincidence felt deliberate, if not in purpose, then in poetic weight. The luminous envelope that formed behind the sun was the most intense recorded during the entire perihelion passage. The light did not merely bloom, it pulsed. Subtle oscillations in brightness matched frequencies typical of Alfvén waves, magnetic ripples travelling through charged particles. This suggested not only emission but interaction. The object was not passively glowing, it was resonating. Yet for all its radiance, 3i Atlas left no trace of fragmentation. No tail, no jets, no debris. The object remained whole, unbroken. Like a stone placed in the centre of a glowing sphere, a sphere that lived only long enough to defy expectation, and then fell silent again. The scientists who examined the frames described the event as a luminous act of defiance, though they would not publish such words. They noted the elegance of the envelope, its symmetry, its coherence. They wrote equations to model the brightness rise and the subsequent plateau. They plotted trajectories and reconstructed solar angles. But the part they could not quantify, the part that lingered, was the fact that nature had hidden the event behind the very star that made it visible. Science is careful. It does not assume intention. But humans, even scientists, are storytellers at heart. And in private, many whispered that the universe seemed to choose when to reveal its mysteries. That 3i Atlas had performed its most extreme transformation only in the one place where human eyes could not intrude. Tonight, Traveller, let that settle in your mind like cooling dust. Some revelations happen only in silence. Some transformations are meant to be recorded, not witnessed. When the object reappeared on the far side of the sun, the great sphere of light was gone. Only a faint, narrow glow remained, thin as memory, quiet as a fading echo. The drama had ended, the curtain lifted, and the visitor continued on, leaving behind a digital imprint of something we still do not fully understand. Rest now, listener. The cosmos reveals itself slowly, and you are here for the parts meant to be seen. Traveller. As our journey continues, the universe guides us into a region not of light, but of perspective. A place where truth emerges not from one observation, but from many. In astronomy, certainty rarely comes from a single point of view. It is born instead from geometry, from separation, from the quiet agreement of distant eyes, looking toward the same mystery. And so we return to the 3 silent machines that watched 3i Atlas from vastly different corners of the Sun-Earth system, Stereo, a Soho, and Goes 19. 3 witnesses separated by millions of kilometers. 3 vantage points that transformed an anomaly into reality. In every field of science, the first instinct in the face of the impossible is doubt. No spacecraft, however precise, is immune to noise. No detector is free of ghosts. And no observation is beyond question when the phenomenon it captures contradicts the laws that have shaped centuries of understanding. The teams who first saw the flare around 3i Atlas did not celebrate. They checked their instruments. They questioned their calibration. They asked whether the sun itself was deceiving them with stray-like magnetic filaments or flickers of plasma. But the universe had prepared something far more elegant than illusion. You see, Traveller, each spacecraft looked from a different angle. Stereo. Drifting ahead of Earth in its orbit, observed the luminous halo from the right. Soho, stationed at the balanced gravity of L1, saw it from the centre. And Goes, 19, hovering in geostationary orbit, viewed it from far to the left. Their positions formed a triangle, a geometric configuration so perfect that no single artifact could have fooled them in the same way at the same moment with the same signature. When scientists overlaid the data, the same glow appeared in all three readings. The same envelope, the same brightness peak, the same coordinates relative to the sun, the same 40-minute plateau, the same impossible calm, and in that moment the skepticism softened. Because geometry had spoken, and geometry does not lie. The parallax between the three spacecraft allowed scientists to measure distance, a subtle shift of a few pixels that revealed the halo was not on the sun's surface, not in its corona, not a projection or a flare or a reflection. It was a distinct object in motion, a body drifting along a hyperbolic path exactly where 3i Atlas should have been. This alone eliminated every theory involving solar artifacts. If the glow had been on the sun, the three spacecraft would have seen it in different positions, but the glow held its place relative to the object itself. In that stillness, a new truth emerged. The luminous envelope belonged to the traveller, not the star. The triangulated data also revealed its size, a sphere nearly 300,000 kilometers across, expanding slightly but never collapsing. A coma that behaved not like dust or gas, but like a field, a boundary, a phenomenon with coherent structure purpose. To scientists, this was unsettling. To you traveller, it may sound beautiful. Because beauty and discomfort often walk together when the universe opens a new door. In mission rooms, engineers stared at the synchronized images with quiet reverence. There is something profoundly humbling in seeing three separate machines built by different hands in different nations, all whisper the same story. Their light curves rose together, their brightness values matched within small margins, their timestamps aligned like heartbeat traces from a single organism, and perhaps in that sense, the universe itself became the organism, the silent architect of a moment too precise to ignore. The triangulation gave scientists confidence not only in the event's reality but in its scale. It revealed that the halo's brightness did not depend on viewing angle, which meant the emission was isotropic, the same in every direction. Natural comets do not glow this way. Their material jets create a symmetry. Their dust scattering depends on alignment. But the radiance of 3i Atlas seemed independent of orientation, as if powered by a mechanism distributed evenly across the entire envelope. Some researchers quietly described it as a luminous equilibrium, a phrase as soft as it is daring. It suggested something operating not chaotically but harmoniously, a system adjusting itself to maintain a uniform glow even as solar wind tore at its edges. Skeptics argued for dust resonance, plasma filaments, magnetospheric bubbles, and perhaps some of these explanations held fragments of truth. But none could fully explain the consistency seen from three directions, the symmetry of the glow, the coherence of its boundary, or the steadiness of its intensity. The triangle of proof remained immovable. Tonight, traveller, let yourself imagine the stillness in the control rooms as scientists realised what this meant. Three machiners millions of kilometres apart had seen the same impossible pulse at the same moment in time, their testimony locked together like three stars defining a constellation. Perspective, not belief, revealed the truth, and that truth carried weight. If one spacecraft had seen the event, it could be dismissed. If two had seen it, it could be debated. But three became a symphony of agreement, a quiet cosmic insistence that the anomaly was real. In the days that followed, the triangulated data was used to build the first complete 3D reconstruction of an interstellar object interacting with our star. Not just a path or a brightness curve, but a full spatial map, a living sequence, a slow rotation showing the envelope swelling, stabilizing and fading. A visualization that made even seasoned researchers lean back in their chairs, as if something ancient had drifted briefly into view. It was the first time humanity had ever watched a visitor from another star respond to the sun in real time from multiple angles. The first time brightness became a geometric truth. The first time an anomaly survived every attempt at dismissal. Traveller. The universe did not shout. It whispered. And three distant machines heard the whisper at once. Let that bring you peace tonight. Some mysteries do not confuse us, they gather us. Some revelations do not divide us, They align us, and some truths are so gentle, so patient, that only distance allows them to be seen. Rest now, observer. The cosmos understands perspective, and it will keep watch as you drift deeper into its quiet. Traveller, let us drift now into a chapter where light becomes something more than a measurement. In astronomy, brightness is usually a gentle teacher. It rises slowly, falls predictably, and follows the quiet mathematics of heat and distance. A comet glows more strongly as sunlight warms it. Dust scatters light. Gas vents shimmer. All of it forms a curve we can read like a familiar sentence. But when 3i Atlas neared the sun, that soft sentence broke, and a new one appeared, abrupt, vertical, impossible. Not a slope, a wall. The first light curve that reached mission control looked like an error. The brightness did not rise in the smooth arc scientists expected. It climbed almost instantly, as though the object had stepped into a different state of being. In less than an hour, its luminosity increased by more than 100-fold. Such behaviour does not belong to comets. It belongs to accelerators, reactors, or runaway chemistry. But even those collapse or vent. 3i Atlas did neither. Brightness is not only illumination, it is behaviour. And this behaviour defied every model used to predict how matter responds near a star. At first, the engineers blamed the instruments. Perhaps the detectors had saturated, or perhaps the object had crossed a glare boundary in the corona. But raw telemetry showed stable parameters, exposure levels adjusted correctly, no sensor overheated, and most importantly 3 different spacecraft stereo, ASOHO and GOES 19, recorded the same vertical rise. 3 vantage points, 3 clocks, 3 independent optical systems, 1 identical wall of light. The scientific mind can doubt a slope. It struggles to doubt a wall. What made the brightness even stranger was the absence of any physical reaction. A normal comet releasing that much energy would shed mass explosively. Jets would erupt, the nucleus would fracture, the orbit would shift. But the data showed perfect stability. No acceleration, no deviation, no tail expanding behind it. The glow rose, but the body remained unmoved, as if the light were an internal process rather than an external injury. In the late hours of mission analysis, a quiet phrase began circulating in private messages. It behaved like a source, not a mirror. To reflect sunlight is natural. To generate visible energy from within with no heating spike, no structural failure is something else entirely. The spectral data deepened this contradiction. The object emitted excess blue and violet light, short wavelengths that require high-energy photons. That meant the light was not simply reflected sunlight. It was produced by some process inside the envelope surrounding the traveller. The corona alone could not account for it. Gas alone could not produce such coherence. And dust, the usual architect of cometary glow, could not maintain uniform brightness across a sphere hundreds of thousands of kilometres wide. Yet that is what the images revealed, a radiance so evenly distributed that it looked like a single breath expanding outward. The brightness curve also refused to fade. As the object moved away from the sun, as heat fell, as radiation pressure weakened, the luminosity should have dropped exponentially. Instead, the curve flattened a plateau stretching across days. It did not cool. It held its light as if conserving some delicate equilibrium. This plateau may be one of the most unsettling signatures in all the data, not because it is loud, but because it is quiet. Natural processes fade, mechanisms stop, engines hum until their fuel runs out. But a plateau speaks of balance, not decay, cushion of stability rather than a collapse. Some proposed thermal inertia, exotic materials storing heat like a furnace stone. Others considered radiative, trapping a fog of plasma, catching photons and releasing them slowly. A few speculated about luminescent surfaces absorbing ultraviolet light and re-emitting it as visible glow. Each idea solved one part of the mystery but left others untouched. None explained the stability of the orbit. None accounted for the symmetry of the brightness. None justified the lack of mass loss. And then, Traveller, the plateau ended, not gradually as cooling would dictate, but abruptly. The brightness dropped like a cliff almost as quickly as it had risen. The graph did not resemble natural thermal decline. It resembled shutdown, a system ending a cycle, a process completing its function. Scientists did not publish this interpretation, but in quiet corners of emails in late-night discussions between colleagues, many admitted what the data implied. It looks like something turned off. This is not proof of intent, it is simply the shape of the curve, but in science, shapes matter, and this one refused to lie. So let this settle gently in your mind tonight. Brightness is the universe thinking in colour. And for a brief moment, 3 Atlas thought, in a way no natural visitor ever has. It rose like a wall, held like a breath, and dimmed like a decision. You're not lost in this mystery, you're part of it. Rest now, traveller. The cosmos will continue its quiet calculations as you drift into sleep. Traveller. Tonight we drift into the soft interior of the mystery, not the brightness, not the geometry, but the fingerprints of the light itself. Because every object in the cosmos, from the smallest grain of dust to the largest star, speaks through its spectrum. A spectrum is identity. It is chemistry made visible. It is the quiet autobiography of matter etched into wavelengths. And yet when scientists peeled away the glare of the sun and isolated the spectral lines of 3I Atlas, they did not find identity. They found contradiction. Spectral analysis is a ritual older than spaceflight. Light is gathered, split and stretched into bands. Each dip and peak corresponds to an element. Hydrogen hums in red, sodium flickers in yellow, carbon whispers in green. Nothing escapes this examination. Even in the vacuum of space, a comet reveals its composition like a confession written in colour. But the confession of 3I Atlas was fragmented, hesitant, and at times unrecognisable. The first puzzle appeared in the carbon bands. Comets often bloom with diatomic carbon near the sun, giving them a faint green glow. But in this case, the carbon signature was shifted, excited, far beyond the energy levels typical for a natural body. Instead of revealing warmth, it revealed agitation, as if the molecules were being driven by something more intense than sunlight alone. Then came the cyanogen. In ordinary comets, it appears as a faint companion to carbon. Yet here the cyanogen band was stronger than expected, almost unnaturally vivid. It shimmered like gas trapped in a laboratory plasma chamber, not a dust cloud drifting through the corona. The ratios were wrong, the excitation was strange, and the spatial distribution defied every known pattern. Energy levels that belonged to short, violent bursts appeared steady, smooth, and uninterrupted. Spectra never lie, but they can whisper answers in a language we don't yet understand. Traveller imagined the quiet confusion in the mission rooms as the data accumulated. Scientists cross-checked, recalibrated, subtracted background noise, compared instruments. Yet the pattern stayed the same. And then came the most troubling part of all, the third spectral anomaly. A set of lines appeared in the region where metallic ions should emerge, specifically magnesium and nickel. But the ratios were reversed. Nickel dominated, magnesium faded, and iron, which should accompany nickel like a shadow, was almost entirely absent. In nature, nickel and iron are forged together in stars. They travel together through supernova debris. They condense together in planet cores. To find nickel without iron is like finding a melody without rhythm, possible but deeply unnatural. Researchers discussed exotic possibilities, fragments of supernova cores, remnants of differentiated worlds, relics torn from white dwarf atmospheres. None fit comfortably. None explained the stability. None explained the blue light. None explained the way the material behaved under the sun's heat. Because this was the other contradiction, whatever 3 Atlas was made of, it did not behave like dust, ice, or rock. It behaved like something engineered for endurance, whether by nature or something older than our imagination. The spectral lines implied that the surface was neither fragile nor volatile. It emitted light instead of losing mass. It endured radiation instead of fracturing. It gave energy back to the cosmos as if built to survive exactly what would destroy a normal object. Some scientists whispered about exotic carbon lattices, materials that absorb ultraviolet radiation and re-emit visible light with remarkable efficiency. On Earth, such structures exist only in engineered environments. Nanostructured films, advanced photonic coatings, materials designed to manipulate light itself. Others explored a more cautious thought. Perhaps this was simply chemistry from another star formed under pressures and temperatures our own world has never known. Alien not by intention but by origin. Still, the puzzle remained. No single theory explained all three anomalies. Every explanation solved one mystery but created another. The carbon bands spoke of high-energy excitation. The cyanogen lines spoke of plasma-like behaviour. The nickel without iron spoke of formation in an environment we cannot yet model. And the uniform blue emission, vast coherent steady, spoke of something else entirely, an interaction with sunlight that resembled transformation, not reflection. Traveller, sometimes the universe gives us evidence but not meaning. Sometimes it hands us a fingerprint from a world we have never seen and asks nothing except that we acknowledge its strangeness. Spectra are the most intimate form of cosmic truth we possess. But the truth of 3i Atlas refused to collapse into clarity. Instead, it widened into humility. The deeper scientists looked, the more the objects seemed to say, "You are observing something older than your equations." Late at night, after hours of comparison and recalibration, a few researchers found themselves staring not at the data, but at the silence beneath it. That silence seemed to ask a gentle question, not whether the object was artificial or natural, but whether the categories themselves were too narrow. Perhaps some materials are not built or born. Perhaps they emerge. Perhaps they endure because endurance is woven into their structure, not their purpose. Tonight, as you rest beneath the quiet sky, remember this spectra do not explain the universe. They simply reveal the threads we do not yet know how to weave. You're not lost in this mystery. You are learning to listen. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos keeps its softest truths for those who dream. Traveller. As we drift deeper into this quiet corridor of the universe, we arrive at a chapter defined not by brightness but by what followed it. After the impossible glow, the blue envelope and the vertical wall of light 3i Atlas entered a stillness so complete that the silence itself became the next mystery. For all our instruments could measure, the universe had simply lowered its voice. In the first hours after Perihelion, researchers waited for another anomaly. They expected a second spike, a new pulse, another break from the laws they trusted. But instead the light softened. The enormous halo contracted until it became only a faint shell. The object's radiance declined not in chaotic fragments or uneven drops, but in a smooth descent, as though it were closing a door rather than cooling from heat. This smoothness unsettled many. Natural comets fade messily, dust scatters. Jet sputter surfaces crack. Nothing fades with composure. Yet 3 Atlas dimmed as if guided by a single steady rhythm. The decline lacked every signature of decay. It felt like deliberate quiet, a controlled return to darkness. Even more curious was the disappearance of the pulses. Earlier, the envelope vibrated every 46 seconds, a breath-like rhythm humming across the halo. But after Perihelion, the rhythm vanished. The oscillations flattened. The spectral flickers smoothed out. It was as if something had finished its work and gone still again. Yet despite the silence, the visitor refused to behave like any comet known to science. No mass loss appeared. No fragments drifted away. No dust hail returned. The surface showed no signs of stress or injury. A comet pushed to the edge of vaporization should have torn itself apart. This one remained whole, untouched, unchanged, impossibly calm. Some researchers argued that the silence was simply the natural end of an exotic excitation state, triggered only under extreme solar radiation. When the conditions fell away, the phenomenon ended. Others wondered if we had witnessed a sequence rather than an accident, an event that ran its course, and then concluded cleanly, leaving nothing behind except fading light. But late at night, when the mission rooms grew dim and the screens glowed softly, a quieter thought surfaced. Perhaps the silence itself was the most revealing part. Not a message, not intention, just a reminder that some phenomena are brief, complete and closed. The universe is filled with one-time events, moments that exist only long enough to be noticed before they slip back into anonymity. As days passed, The object dimmed into a pinpoint of blue drifting among the stars. Telescopes kept watching, but the data grew unremarkable. No more pulses, no more spectral anomalies, only the steady flight of a small body continuing its path out of the inner solar system. For many who studied it, the brilliance of the anomaly faded quickly, but the silence lingered. It became the true enigma, because the glow, the plateau, the strange spectral lines were extraordinary, yes, but the stillness afterward felt like the universe exhaling, as if the moment was never meant to repeat. Tonight, traveller, let that thought settle gently within you. Some mysteries blaze once and vanish. Some revelations speak in light, but the deepest ones speak in silence, and sometimes the silence is the part that stays. Traveller. As we drift to the quiet edge of this story, let your breath soften. The journey of Three-Eye Atlas has carried us through light contradiction and silence, and now it leaves us here in the gentle aftermath, where the universe speaks more through what it withholds than what it reveals. Tonight you and I have followed a visitor that broke predictions, defied theory, and reminded us that even in an age of instruments and equations, wonder is still possible. It showed us that the cosmos is not a solved puzzle, but a living frontier, vast, patient, and still writing its own vocabulary of mystery. And you, observer, were part of that listening. Part of that quiet act of witnessing something ancient move through the sun's fire and into the cold again. In the end, that may be the greatest gift Three-Eye Atlas offered, the reminder that we are small, yes, but not irrelevant. Not when we look up, not when we pay attention. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Some silences are the universe thinking, and somewhere out there a fragment from another star continues its slow, unbroken path into the dark. Rest now, traveller. The cosmos will keep watch, and if this story found you tonight, you may stay for the next. Stay curious.